Without this artificial price that we put on cocaine, I wouldn't have been selling cocaine.
Hi, I'm Zach Weissmuller for Reason TV. We're here with Freeway Rick Ross today. He was the notorious drug dealer from the 1980s who is widely credited with introducing crack cocaine on a mass scale in Los Angeles and eventually nationwide. A federal judge sentenced Ross to life in prison for purchasing more than 100 kilograms of cocaine from a federal agent, but an appeals court found that this amounted to over-sentencing, and Ross walked free in 2009. His latest autobiography tells the story of his rise to and fall from power. He'll be featured in an upcoming documentary, Freeway, Crack in the System, about his life, and he's portrayed by Michael K. Williams in the new movie Kill the Messenger about the late journalist Gary Webb. Freeway Rick Ross, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You are inextricably linked with Los Angeles. I mean, your nickname comes from the 110 freeway. Could you just describe Los Angeles at that time and what the dividing line that the freeway represented?
You know, when you went east of the 110 freeway, it turned to black, and when you went west, it was all white. It was definitely segregated, and the 110 freeway was that line.
I think it's fair to say you grew up in the heart of Crips territory, but you went to high school at Dorsey High, which is actually only a few miles from where we are right now. And you got into Dorsey through an unusual path. You started playing tennis outside of the school, and the tennis coach saw you and recruited you to come to the school. Was that your ambition at the time?
When it became apparent to me that I wasn't going to be big enough to play basketball or football, then I was looking for another way to get myself out the ghetto.
You went through school without ever learning to actually read. That is where we see this transition where you're about to go off and pursue a tennis scholarship in college, but the coach tells you, we can't accept somebody who is unable to read.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
then, is that the moment where you started turning to drug dealing, where you decided
Well,
to go on this different path?
I started to slide back into South Central LA, and not going over to Dorsey as much as I used to, and starting to hang out with guys in the community, the guys that I went to elementary and junior high school with, and next thing I'm at the street races, and then I won a street car. And it just kept going on and on and on to the next thing I know, I'm getting introduced to cocaine.
What was it about cocaine that made it such an attractive product to sell right away? Profit margins?
I learned about PCP at that time. I learned about angel dust, but the money in those weren't as attractive, and those two drugs were more of a harsher drugs.
So moving from powder cocaine to crack cocaine was a big deal in terms of profitability for your business. Could you just describe what exactly is the difference?
When I first started selling, I was selling powder, and the guys would be snorting, and then their nose would start to bleed and would mess up their membranes. Well, with crack, that never happened. You can't smoke enough crack, you can't OD on crack. What's wind up going to happen is that your money's going to run out.
In the book, you describe this scene along 81st Street. It's this kind of open market bazaar, and there's no police interference. Talk about that scene a little bit and how it was even possible that that would exist.
Well, for a long time, the police never came over. Drugs is considered a victimless crime. So it's kind of like a crime where nobody's going to come in and testify unless the police get involved. People were randomly walking up to cars. People was coming down the sidewalk. At any given day, there could be 10 to 15 guys out selling PCP sticks. So what I did is I saw that they had that type of openness. I just said, all I got to do is bring my cocaine here and fit right into them. And eventually, the cocaine took over, and the PCP guys left and went away.
What was it about you and your style that made you kind of rise to the top in this way?
I saved my money. I didn't blow my money. I didn't take my money and go out and buy jeans and hats and tennis shoes and gold chains. What I did is I took my money and I went and bought more drugs.
Did you ever consider moving out of the drug business and above board?
I did. I wanted a chain of hotels. I also did apartment buildings, houses. When I was building houses, I did real good at it.
Really?
Yeah, I made about $400,000 a year. But where I messed up at with all of my other businesses is that I never stopped selling drugs.
I'm sure that paled in comparison to the amount of money you were making off the drugs.
It did.
One of the more controversial claims involves Oscar Danilo Blandon, a supplier who turned out to be a federal agent and was the person who ultimately led to your downfall. You were a source for the journalist Gary Webb, who claimed that Blandon was funneling cocaine money to the Contras, either with the help of the CIA or with a kind of like turn the other cheek attitude from
Correct.
the CIA. Do you stand by Webb's reporting?
Since Gary's passed, the CIA has come out and admitted that they were working with known drug traffickers. So now it's no longer this myth or this perception that it may have happened or it may not have happened. It absolutely happened. The government admitted it. They put it in their own report.
Sometimes it spins off into theories like, oh, the government purposely created the crack epidemic in LA. You wouldn't go that far, would you?
It doesn't matter if they purposely planned on doing that. What wound up happening is it flooded the ghettos of America. Yeah. 600,000 black men are in prison right now for nonviolent crimes. Our prison industry has boomed. So that happened. Why did it happen? Was it personally targeted? We may never know. Oliver North and those guys were given a pardon before they ever went to trial, so the evidence never came out.
Has the drug war over its past 40 years, which is very much aligned with your life, been a success or a failure?
People ask me, oh, well, you saying should drugs be legal? I don't know. But what I do know is that the drug war that we're fighting right now is a total failure. There's more drugs on the street of America than ever before. I think it's time to take all these old people out of here who's been sitting back, making money off the prison industry, not caring if it's going to end the drug war.
You made millions of dollars selling drugs. How do you think your life would have been different if there had not been a war on drugs at that time?
Well, without this artificial price that we put on cocaine, I wouldn't have been selling cocaine. You give a kid the opportunity to make $1,000 a week, rather than being broke, no less than going to McDonald's and working for, at that time, $3.50 an hour. Which one would he choose?
We've talked about the war on drugs and the victimless nature of drug crimes. The other side would say it's not so victimless, that it's been called the crack epidemic in the past, and it's ruined thousands of lives, ravaged communities. Do you have any personal regrets about getting into this business?
I definitely have some regrets. I regret ever getting involved. But then on the other hand, people volunteer to get high. Nobody's putting a gun up to anybody's head saying, oh, you got to go over here and get high. And I believe that everybody that's involved is just as responsible.
There's an argument that, addiction, it's a sickness and you're preying on that sickness. They don't really have a choice in the traditional sense. You don't buy that?
You do get drawn in, and it's tough to quit.
Yeah.
But it's also tough for the dealer to quit because he gets drawn in too.
To the money.
He gets just as hooked.
Yeah.
And for him, it's worse for him because nobody tells him to quit. See, his whole family and his whole community encourages him to keep going, that you're doing good. Yeah. But with the user, people will tell the user, boy, you look bad. But with the dealer, they're going to say, boy, you look good. I like that car. I like those jeans, them shoes. How much they cost?
You have some regrets, but the money you made and what you've done is allowing you to kind of take a different path now and give back. You went from going through the entire school system, not being able to read, and now you're making book recommendations. It's an important part of the story, really, because you learned to read and were able to get yourself out of a life sentence. Can you just describe how that all unraveled?
Marcelli convinced me that I could read. He made me my ABCs on some cue cards, and he taught me how to sound my words out. I went from there to reading the newspaper, to eventually reading law books, and then I found the issues that got me sitting here with you today.
Wow. And the issue that you discovered was the fact that you had been over-sentenced, right? Yeah.
They charged me with the 3-strike law because I had been taken from state to state and charged, but they ran all my time concurrent, and the fact that I had never gotten out of prison.
You came here wearing a shirt saying the real Rick Ross is not a rapper, so I'm assuming there's a message you're trying to get across. Would you like to share that?
Yeah. There's a guy who uses my name, and me and him have been into a little bit of a battle over my name, and this is my way of taking a shot at him. You know.
All right. So take note. Rick Ross, thank you very much.
Thank you again.
For Reason TV, I'm Zach Weissmuller.